and serving others so that our audience can buy into the message. They really need that connection.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool? Ready to get started?
I think so.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Believe, Be Real, Be Bold podcast. We're checking in from the Fit Life Champions gym office with my good friend Sarah Henry. How are you today?
Good. How are you, Dave?
Good, thank you very much. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, to join me here. We've gotten to know each other quite a bit in the last month or so.
We have.
But I want to share with our audience a little bit about why and how you got into it is that you're doing.
Sure. So I actually went to school to become a psychologist. I went back to school after, being in the working world for about 10 years and was really into the idea of becoming a therapist. And while I was doing that, I discovered coaching. And I love the fact that it's a lot more future focused and it's goal oriented. And I just started exploring that. One thing led to another, and here I am. So, yeah.
Here you are.
Here I am.
Good. Is there like a momentous time in your life that kind of guided you towards or led you towards maybe beginning a psychology, beginning a therapist role, or choosing to go into the coaching world?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question because, my trajectory is very interesting. In my 20s, I was in the nonprofit world and I was even in the healthcare field for a little while, just sort of floundering, but also climbing the corporate ladder at the exact same time where on paper, everything looks really great. I had this incredible journey of accomplishing so much in my early career. And then I discovered that I wasn't happy. And I was like, what am I doing? And it kind of ate away at me. And after a while, it almost literally ate away at me because I had a panic attack at work. And things sort of spiraled from there where I was like, okay, I need to make some changes or my life's over, And maybe that sounds extreme, but it's true. I was pretty miserable. I was hanging out with people that weren't a good fit for me. I was trying to do the things that I thought I was supposed to be doing, and I was so unhappy. So I had that panic attack, and as crazy as it may sound, that was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. So it sort of forced me to make all of these changes where I went back to school. I quit my job. I'm so thankful that I have an understanding husband because he supported me through all of that and found a new path. And, I knew all along that I wanted to help people. So that's sort of where it led to coaching. I, went back to school to become the therapist and then discovered coaching and it went from there. So
Awesome. It sounded like a little, maybe not rock bottom, but definitely a valley in between two peaks of this panic attack occurring serendipitously at the right time.
Yes.
Oftentimes for me, those things happen at the wrong time.
Yeah.
But it's a wake-up call for me.
Oh, truly.
And what have you seen since you've woken up? Different in your life or different in other people's lives?
So much growth, and I think that really you attract what you're putting out there. So I've attracted this new crew of really positive, lovely people in my life, and I met you. Here I am.
That's right.
I'm sitting here today.
Yeah.
I feel like everything came together for all the right reasons, and I don't know. It's been a crazy journey, but I wouldn't change a thing, not one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that I call them catalyst moments in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had a catalyst moment in 2017, and if I thought back on it now, I would go through it 100 times over again if it brought me to this place now.
Exactly.
And that's so wild to think of. Like, when you're in it, you have no hope and you have like no faith that things are going to turn around.
Yeah.
But then, 15, 16 months later, I'm like, bring it. I can do it again. I can actually handle that same amount of pain and that same amount of change in my life because I'm more resilient today than I was then.
Absolutely.
And then compared to where I was a year and a half before that.
It's amazing. It's like when you're in the thick of it, you can't see the forest through the trees.
Right. Because you're not outside eyes looking in on your own life.
Right.
You're just either stuck in the mud or quicksand, or you just can't climb out of this rut that you're in.
Yeah.
Who is it that you find coming to you for services most?
People who were in the same spot that I was in about 5 years ago. The women who are really stuck in that mire and muck, that negative mindset and that cycle, that vicious cycle of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that we all find ourselves in at one point or another. But when you get stuck in that and you can't get out, it will ruin you. And that's where I was at. I found that I just was my own worst enemy. It was really hard to get out of my own way. And I set the bar so extremely high for myself that, when I couldn't meet those extremely high expectations, I start having these really negative thoughts. They led to all of these really negative feelings, like I'm not good enough. And, I had insomnia, a ton of anxiety, a lot of depression. And then that ultimately led to all of these negative behaviors, like drinking too much, not having the energy to work out or to eat right, self-sabotaging, where I totally blamed external sources. And because of that, I would try to sabotage my marriage or my friendships or, what was I doing? But I couldn't see a way out of it. And, it's so hard to see your way out of it when you're in that mind frame. So that's who I want to help. I want to help those people that are just so stuck and just feel like there's no hope, because there is hope.
Yeah. And I think that the hope for me, the realization that I wasn't alone and that other people have gone through it many times before I went through it, or will go through it again many, many more times.
Yeah.
And those are the people that I need to connect with,
Yes.
relate to, so that they can be my hope and faith. And you always surround yourself, or you want to surround yourself with people who are further ahead than you, so that you can emulate, so that you can walk in their shoes.
Good point.
And I'm so glad that you've touched on happiness and negative thoughts, because I've done something new for this episode. In anticipation of you coming into the studio, I reached out to our audience on Instagram, and I asked them to submit a few questions via, our Instagram Messenger.
Okay.
And a few, 3 or 4, have actually given us some topics to talk about today.
Awesome. So
our first is, our follower, our audience member has a friend who's always negative.
Okay.
And she has this beautiful life, and yet always finds things to moan about and complain about. And the friend loves her dearly and would love to find a way to help her kind of swap the negative energy for some positive vibes.
Okay.
What kind of advice would you give for that listener?
I love that question. And kudos to this person who wants to be a good friend and support their friend who's in that negative mindset. I would say, this is a coaching trick, but I love it so much. And I found myself sort of tricking my husband when he wasn't really liking his job all that much.
We all need
trick our spouses a little bit from time to time, and our partners. One thing that I was doing, he would come home and he looked a little grumpy at the end of the day, and I would say, "What was the best part of your day?" And he was like, "Well," and he'd have to think about it for a minute, but he always could come up with something. Always. Even if it was like, well, I got outside and you got to step away from my desk for 20 minutes or whatever it was, I think just sort of switching the questions and really reframing them so they're positive, it really just helps you think about the positive and think about all the good things that are actually happening in your life.
That's a great way to interact with other people, like that you have all good intentions to help as a friend or as a family member.
Yeah.
And I went through the same thing in my relationship maybe almost 2 years ago. Yes, there were custody conversations between her and her ex, and during that time, I observed just such negative thoughts and words, and I actually said it like pretty point blank, because I'm an 8, I'm the challenger. I'm like, you know what, recently, you've been really negative, and let's talk about that. Let's actually sit down and have that conversation. We had about 2.5 years worth of a relationship before that, so we were in it.
Yeah.
And I felt like I could ask that question. It can't come from everybody, just a casual friend on the bus or whatever.
Hey, what's wrong with you?
Right. And then now that I've been single for almost 2 years, I don't have somebody there to be my sounding board.
Yeah.
To be my partner in this life. So I've chosen like daily affirmations and journaling.
That's so good.
Daily gratitude.
Yeah.
And all it takes is like three to five things on a daily basis that I'm grateful for. And that's a big part of my single journey, is like, what am I grateful for in my life?
Yeah.
So that I can be happy. So that I can be positive instead of negative.
I love that you're doing that. before I get out of bed every morning, I try to think of at least 3 things that I'm grateful for. And yeah, it's, when you're in the mire and in the muck, it can be hard to do, but there's so much to be grateful for. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, it's been a long road, but every step along the way has taught me something new.
Good.
And it can be as simple as like, you know what? I got a good night's sleep last night.
Yes.
I'm really grateful for that because we all have busy lives, and
we do.
We've got to pack a lot of stuff in those waking hours that we need to recharge and rejuvenate, and that's a great healthy habit that that I've tried to adhere to.
I couldn't agree more.
Awesome answer. Let's move on to question number 2. How do I turn back on happy when I lose it?
Ooh.
This comes from our friend in Dallas. Thanks, Cassandra, for throwing this question out to us.
Yeah, great question, Cassandra. I think it's really good to just know what lights you up. Whether it's exercise or dance or cooking, or even if you have that one friend that oh man, I'm struggling, but I know if I call this person, they're going to cheer me up no matter what. And doing it and making a point to do it, that's big. I work from home. I work for myself, and I find that sometimes I can get kind of stuck, and there's days when I'm like in my pajamas all day because I'm in my comfort zone and I don't have to see anybody, but it can get to that point where it's like, I haven't seen anybody, I haven't socialized, and that's when for me things start getting a little bit darker, where I'm like, okay, it's day 2, probably haven't brushed my hair. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but but I know now what it takes to pull me out of that, and it's the hardest part, I think, is forcing yourself to do it, but knowing that if you do it, it's going to change your perspective completely. Taking a walk, exercise, whatever it is. So I think it's just first figuring out what lights you up, and that could be anything. So just testing the waters and figuring out what brings you joy.
I love having the conversation about purpose.
Yeah.
What is your purpose? Because once we figure out the why, the how becomes very easy.
Yeah.
And before spring break occurred at Metro State when I'm teaching, I wanted to bring up the conversation of purpose, and in the warm-up section of our workout, I'm like, hey, what's your purpose? Here's my purpose, to share the benefits of fitness and nutrition with everybody for improving mental health. That's my purpose. So if I ever feel like I'm getting down in the muck and the mire, I reattach my decisions and my choices and my behaviors and my activities around that purpose.
Yes.
And building my hobbies and my lifestyle around that purpose brings back like this feedback loop of positivity and building upon the purpose. And this leads us to our next question of like, this is a mother, married, 2 children, very young, like 1 years old and 3 years old. So
okay.
Michelle, thank you so very much for giving me this question today. She asks, what is a good balance for a working mom to have some alone time or / friend time? How do I get the courage to do something for myself? And how to possibly encourage my significant other to do the same?
Well, Mary, first of all, thank you for writing in. I don't know what people are talking about when they talk about the terrible 2s. I think it's the terrible 3s.
3 is a hard
3 is
age.
hard.
2 is angelic compared to 3.
Yeah, it's almost like when they say no, it's kind of cute.
And then they get into that habit, and then they're testing like the boundaries at 3.
So kudos to you. I think more than anything, it's important, and you can probably speak to this as a parent. You can't give from an empty vessel, right? So if you're totally depleted and you're not giving to yourself, and you're putting yourself dead last, as a lot of women tend to do anyway, but when you're a mother, even more so, you don't have anything left to give your kids. I mean, really, or your spouse, your significant other, your pets, your plants, whatever it is.
Yeah, they have a pet too.
Okay, so they have their hands full.
Yes, they do.
I suggest, first of all, just looking at your schedule, sort of like from a bird's eye view. When do I wake up in the morning? When do I go to bed? Even if it means waking up 15 minutes earlier, going to bed 15 minutes later, and penciling it in. Because I'm sure if you've got a busy household, you may say, oh, well, if I have an extra 15 minutes, I'm going to mop the floors, throw in an extra load of laundry, whatever. But make that about you and be really intentional about it. And and it's non-negotiable, you know? Make it a non-negotiable and book something in.
That's right.
Yeah.
Setting healthy boundaries before you get into a relationship continues on when you get into a relationship. You and your spouse or partner or significant other are partners.
Yes.
And you are individuals who come together to create whatever life it is that you want. And where we get these blurred lines is like the two halves kind of cross over each other so much more when we are in a deeply committed, loving relationship that you lose yourself and you lose your identity.
Yes.
And then we stop doing self-care, self-love, making time for ourselves.
Yep.
And that's losing healthy boundaries in a relationship.
So true.
And, you know, we're fans of the Enneagram around here.
We are.
I know this question, I know this person very, very well, and she's a type 9 on the Enneagram, the Peacemaker, which we're just finishing up this mini-series on Fridays, where I'm introducing the audience to the Peacemaker.
Yeah.
And what a tendency for this person is, one, they'll stuff down until it blows up like a volcano. But that relates to this tendency of being very motherly, like, I'm going to just make sure that everybody in the room is at peace and is taken care of, and I'm going to put myself last. And yes, every individual, every personality type does that to a point.
Yeah.
But this personality type, so much more.
Yeah. They take it to an extreme, and it probably feels really good in a way, like this is what I should be doing. I'm taking care of everyone around me, but oh man, you have to take care of yourself too. So that's tough.
Absolutely correct. Like, it is fulfilling to let everybody else be first. It does kind of take us away from our purpose.
Right.
Once again, like, what is your purpose? Why do you work 50 hours a week? Why do you take care of 2 children? So that you can do what? Like, that's the question that I love to ask. Why are you doing all this? So that you can do what? And be selfish about it. Like, your answer should be a little bit selfish, otherwise it's not going to be strong enough to get you up in the morning.
Yeah, I like that question. I think too, I just learned this term, emotional labor. Are you familiar with that?
No, tell me.
So emotional labor is something that women tend to take on. You know, we are more progressive now in this generation where men definitely share the load with women, but women arguably also carry the emotional labor load where we're always making these to-do lists and we're maybe making the plans and the grocery lists in our heads. And, you know, I was listening to a podcast on it where it was Dear Sugars. I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast, but they were talking about it and they were just basically saying that, you know, women just have this tendency to carry so much more. They don't necessarily know how to ask for help. And then when they do and they say, honey, can you go to the store? They maybe are getting the phone calls of like, well, do you want the white bread or the wheat, you know? And so as women, they don't necessarily feel like they can completely let go. And that's a struggle for a lot of us. So that's tricky too.
If you choose to enter into a partnership, and that's really where I'm believing that my ideal partner or my relationship or my girlfriend will be for me is like, with me as a partnership. Then I won't have to ask what kind of bread we want for the house. You know, it's because we both participate equally in sharing the physical load, the emotional load, the spiritual load, the financial load.
Yeah.
So that we're not, one person isn't burdened more so than the other. It's not always going to be 50-50.
Sure.
It's not always going to be 100%, 100%. And if we need to shift between 60-40 and then it flip-flops, then that's our partnership.
Yeah, I like that. I like that.
And building our relationship around a partnership will actually prevent this from occurring down the road. It's like we're both building in enough self-care.
Yeah.
We're both building in enough self-love so that we can pour into our family.
I like that too.
Yeah?
Yes.
Any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. You know, I think that it's so critical, and just to communicate to your partner what you're needing, what you're not getting. Have the lines of communication open. Back to the emotional labor part, I think it's just more that sometimes we fail to communicate really the help that we're needing, and we've been raised by mothers who tended to take care of everything, and it's sort of hard to break that cycle. So not blaming or shaming the men in our lives at all. You know, I think that there's great intentions there, but it's everybody communicating and talking about what they need to make it work. So
Sure, we isolate ourselves, and no one of us is an island,
yeah,
and none of us can do it alone.
so true.
Yeah, coming back to that, like, hope and faith piece is like, you're not alone in this. You're not the only mother, wife, husband, brother, sister who feels this way.
Yeah.
So reach out to a community of maybe a Christian organization or like a women's group, men's group. I go to 2 men's group every other week so that I can be poured into by other men who are going through the same thing I'm going through.
Absolutely. I've been networking with a lot of, entrepreneurs, who are just trying to go it alone because it can feel so isolating, like I was saying. So yeah, finding those people that are going through the exact same thing you are, and just the relatability factor is everything. Feeling like you're just not alone. We tend to think when we're going through something that we're the only person who's ever experienced that, and no one can possibly understand what we're going through, but that is so not true.
Yeah, we couldn't be more wrong if that's our thought process.
Yeah. Did we answer Mary's question?
Yeah, Michelle's question.
Michelle, sorry.
That's all
Michelle.
good. It's all good. Yes, I hope that we did. And she actually listed in her question things like pottery class or art class, etc., like the hobbies that fulfill us or that actually pair very well with our purpose. If you're a creative type, then these classes are going to be great. I've butchered paint and Pinot so many times on the pod, but that's a hobby that's like something you can do alone, something you can do with your girlfriends.
Yeah.
That's individual and separate from your partner.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? What other classes like that, or organizations or groups or activities that you can think of that would actually help?
The first thing that comes to mind, because I just love being outdoors, is like joining a hiking class or group, I should say. Just getting out into nature. It doesn't cost anything, or maybe a nominal fee, but just we have so many great trails here, and we're so spoiled.
We are.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. And yoga, that's always great. I know that there's always moms groups like at coffee shops, and just check out Meetup.
Book clubs.
Book clubs, yeah. Meetup and Eventbrite are both really great. If you could have the quirkiest hobby, and I guarantee there's somebody else that has that interest too, and there's a group for it. So yeah.
Good suggestions.
Yeah.
One of the hiking clubs that we love, Nate is a massage therapist. He runs Denver Hiking Club. So if that's something that you guys in Denver are looking for, join that group on Facebook. It's an awesome opportunity to connect with like-minded people who are looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
On to the next question. So Heather writes in, and she says, the season that I am in is like contentment. She's content with being single, living alone. She's an empty nester. And maybe how the hell do I get out of my own way in order to, I know that this might be centered around relationship, because that's what Heather and I talk about most. But she seems to trip herself up and self-sabotage, maybe in defiance of that contentment zone.
Okay.
Or maybe in like preventing herself from finding that healthy relationship that she knows she's seeking.
So almost like if it ain't broke, then don't try to fix it kind of thing? Like that? Or yeah. That's an interesting question. It is easy to just get sort of sucked into a comfort zone. My husband and I have been doing this little project where we're trying to spend less money, but we just have been finding lately that like we don't leave our house, and it's like, what are we doing? We could at least take a walk or something. We're not that bad. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, when you're in your comfort zone, you're in your house and it's cozy, especially in the winter. Luckily it's nice today, but it's easy to do, to just sort of stay put and not change anything. And I would encourage her to do the same thing though, just see what's out there, whether it's exploring groups or, there may be something out there that she's never considered. So it might spark something in her, like, oh, I've always been interested in knitting, and join a knitting group or something like that.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
The definition of crazy is like doing the same thing we've always done and expecting different results.
Yes, it is.
And mixing it up, changing it up, whether that's your weekly routine, your daily routine, or simply just where you're intending to find people and meet people, mixing it up is a good thing.
Yeah.
Like if you're exclusively dating online, you're going to see the same type of results.
That's
if
a very
you're
good point.
exclusively dating organically or out in the wild, as they like to say, you'll generally find the same results unless maybe you're not seeking that in a bar or a restaurant, and maybe you're looking for it in a church group or the book club or the meetup.com or Eventbrite. These are all ways to mix it up. We've had this conversation before on the podcast about my routine. It's way too regimented. Like jiu-jitsu Monday, Wednesday, Friday at noon.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu Tuesday, Thursday at night. But these are non-negotiables for me. I flex the times of day so that I can get out and meet different people.
Good for you.
Got the invite to go to tacos last night.
Ah.
And Taco Tuesday is not normally part of my routine.
Yeah.
And I'm there with a couple, and then the guy, his sister. You know, so there's 4 of us, and we're actually enjoying this beautiful spring evening in Colorado.
Yeah.
Taco Tuesday. I didn't necessarily meet anybody new at that moment, or that was not my intention, but it shook up my routine so that I went home and I actually chilled the rest of the night, and I was feeling out of that contentment, actually.
Yeah. Did you have fun?
Oh, absolutely, because we talked about relationships the whole time.
Even better. You love talking about relationships.
I'm really fascinated by modern relationships.
Yeah.
Because it's so savage out there.
Oh, it's crazy. I'm guessing. I can't imagine if something, God forbid, happened to me and Pete. I think I'd become a cat lady. I don't know. I say that, but that's not true. That's not true. I shouldn't say that. You can edit that out later, right?
I'll encourage you to get outside of your comfort zone. Because growth occurs outside of your comfort zone. And if we're in this series of contentment, or this phase of life where we're content with my job and my friend group and I've got this routine, then what you're seeking is just beyond all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do we avoid this moment of tripping ourselves up, talking ourselves out of trying something new in order to self-sabotage?
I would encourage her to say yes to the next 5 things that come her way. I think she would have a lot of fun doing that. I get in my comfort zone too, like I said, especially during the winter where, I'm in hibernation mode, and I've been encouraging myself to just say yes more, and it's opened some doors. I've met new people and, experienced some new things, and, it's a great way to shake things up a little bit. Even just exploring like a different neighborhood, or, that's such a mindfulness exercise too, where you're trying to do things from a slightly different perspective. There's been studies done where, when we are students, you're in like a university setting, in a classroom setting, we all tend to sit in the same seats. I don't know if you've ever noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
So an interesting mindfulness exercise on perspective is to sit somewhere different. It just sort of shifts the way that you're listening, you're perceiving what's being said, you're, noticing maybe the sights and sounds of the room a little bit differently, the temperature. It just lights you up in a different way where you're just a little bit more aware. So, just all of those little shifts that maybe just seem so minor, minuscule, they can make a big difference.
What I'm hearing you say is that self-awareness kind of precedes this mindfulness act. Our listeners who have reached out are in a place of this self-awareness. They're like, I'm stuck. And this kind of prompts a question to a professional, to somebody who's knowledgeable about it and who's actually passionate about it. Okay, so I'm self-aware that I'm stuck. And then I'm going to be mindful about these different decisions, like mixing it up, sitting in a different seat in the classroom, different pew at church, or like take a different route to and from work.
Yes.
Or try a different gym. If you're going to 24-hour fitness, try a different location.
Why not?
Yeah, you might actually find a new group of people. You might actually find a new exercise by observing your surroundings that you haven't tried before, and you're like, wow, I just got fired up by trying something at a different location, but it's the same intention.
Yep.
I'm going there to get work done, etc.
Yeah.
But I'm changing something about it.
That's so true.
So beyond this mindfulness, so let's kind of grasp the concept of mindfulness. Why would somebody want to pursue mindful behavior?
Mindfulness is a word that I think gets thrown around quite a bit, and it can mean a lot of different things. But, being mindful to me at least means taking a step back and really perceiving the world, and being aware of the present moment and not the past and not the future, just the present. being fully present during a conversation, being totally engaged. Why is it important? Well, I think that, we live in such a fast-paced world where our minds are constantly either on the on the past or on the future. A lot of us tend to dwell on the past when we're just sort of like reviewing all of the disappointments and, wishing things had gone differently in that conversation we just had or what have you, all of these perceived failures. A lot of us, too, are very future-focused, where we're like list makers, we're just sort of like anticipating the next things we need to do. We're missing out on what's right in front of us, We're missing out on the conversations that are happening. We're missing out on the gorgeous weather outside. We're glued to our phones. So we're missing out on so much there too, and that could be like a separate podcast episode.
I think it could be a whole season of a podcast.
I really do too. I really do too. But that's why I think more now than ever before, we should be focused on the present moment and taking in the joy of life and all that's in front of us. It can be so easy to just take everything for granted.
You're so absolutely right. And there's a key piece in there that I would like to bring back to that question of how do I become happy again?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're focused too much on the past, I've often found that it's correlated with depression.
Yes.
When we focus on the past. If we're focused on the future, that's anxious feelings.
Anxiety.
But if we're focused on the present, then we actually become a little bit more secure with who we are,
Mm-hmm.
what we want, why we're there. And if we switch from maybe overthinking the past, that last conversation that I had that I felt icky or I made somebody else feel terrible about themselves, and I focus on the present, being mindful, then I can actually boost and increase happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a true correlation there.
Yeah.
So what are some skills that we can teach and learn to be more mindful and be more present?
Mm-hmm. One, back to the phone. I have to go there.
Heck yeah.
I have to go there. Just the endless scrolling that we're doing. I just read a statistic that we, as Americans, spend 2 years of our lives on Facebook.
Oh my God.
2 years. How crazy is that, right? So, one tip that I like to give is just focus on one thing at a time. And if you're going to spend time on social media, great. But just do that. Don't do it while you're eating, If you're having a conversation, put down your phone. That's kind of rude, too,
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm sure you have some insights on that with the dating world, too, having the phone on the table. And, it's almost like there's other people there with you. It's sort of strange. But just, one thing at a time. According to science, we're not good at multitasking anyway.
That's very true.
We're not effective at multitasking, and we think we can do it all at once, but that's so not true. We miss important details when we try to do that. So, just one thing at a time. Like when you're eating a meal too, think about the temperature of your food, how it tastes. Are you still hungry? Realizing that, you're nourishing your body, and just focus on that one thing, Am I answering your question?
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up mindful eating.
Yeah.
We encourage our members to chew 15 times per bite. And that is helping us eat slowly,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to help us get to our goals faster. Because if we eat slowly, we're tuning into this mind-body connection where the gut is the second brain, and it gives our brain feedback that we're full.
Yeah.
No faster than 20 minutes. It takes the gut 20 minutes to tell the brain that we're full.
Right.
So the slower we eat, the more mindful we are about how our food tastes, how it feels in our mouth,
Yeah.
how it's nourishing our bodies, then we can actually be more mindful at that moment. But if we've got our phone out, then we're certainly not present, and we definitely can't use that skill.
That is so true. That is so true.
You mentioned yoga before we started recording.
Yeah.
We were touring the gym, and you're like, I can't go without yoga. I start to feel a difference
I do.
when I'm not regularly attending yoga. So how does yoga help us stay more present and become more mindful?
Great question. When you're focusing on your poses, on your breath, and really nothing else, that's mindfulness. That's the definition of mindfulness right there. We just got a puppy,
I heard, yeah.
She's amazing, but she's a handful. And, you know, I went about 4 days without doing yoga, which if you know me well, like, that's a long time for me to go without practicing. And I felt it. You know, I just felt like I was in this brain fog and, you know, talk about feeling scattered, where I was sort of tending to her needs, also trying to focus on my business and, you know, manage a household or co-manage a household, and felt really scattered. But when I got back on the mat, it just completely changed my perspective, and I just felt my body slow down and stretch out, and, you know, I really tuned into my breath, and I felt my heart rate slow down, and yeah, so good for me, so good for everybody.
And there's always time.
Mm-hmm.
There is enough time to accomplish all that it is that we want to accomplish.
Yes.
We can almost create time if we limit the chances of multitasking. Because I've tried, multitasking doesn't work.
Yeah.
Especially in the realm of dating. I've become more productive because I make time for the priorities that I have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, taping a podcast episode is priority.
Yeah.
It's the most rewarding thing that I can do on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah.
Because I'm a lifelong learner. That's one of my core values. I'm also connecting, which is another strength of mine. Connecting with you guys out there, and then you here in the interviewee chair. You know, like, that's me being mindful about where I'm at in the season of life.
Absolutely.
Where I want to go, because I'm certainly not living in the past anymore. I've done enough work to get out of it. Right?
Yes. Relatable.
Right, relatable. So, to get a jump start, to get out of the muck and the mire,
Yeah.
what's your one piece of advice? What's your one counsel for us to make a switch?
In terms of looking at your schedule and saying, oh, I don't feel like I have time.
Yeah, that's definitely one area. Like, you could say making time for self-care,
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
And that's a jump start. The jump start that I love to recommend is talk to somebody.
Yes, that's a great one.
So if somebody comes to you and they need a jump start, what's the first thing that you talk to them about?
We look at the big picture. We look at how they're spending their time from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed. And we're also looking at when they're doing that too. You know, if you're hitting the snooze button several times.
Guilty.
Most people are. You know, it's easy to do. It's hard to get out of bed when it's so comfy and cozy, but you're losing time there. And, you know, if your body needs rest, by all means, take the time you need. But if that's a pattern and you're losing like an hour, and then you're saying, well, I don't have an hour to work out, you know, I don't even have 20 minutes to work out. Well, that's
How many
an
times
area.
did you hit the snooze button?
Sure,
Mhm.
sure. The time you're spending on social media, the time you're spending just kind of puttering around the house aimlessly, or, you know, there's definitely areas where you can probably carve out a little bit of time for yourself. And so when I work with clients, that's something that we definitely consider. We look at the big picture and we just kind of go from there. You know, where can we structure your day a little bit differently? And then also too, like, what's most important to you? What's number one? If you could make time for one thing, even if it was like just 5 minutes, you know, what would you do? It could be anything. And if it's something that gets them moving, or, you know, something that just causes them to feel better about themselves, if it's like, I, you know, made a healthy salad instead of like microwaving a Hot Pocket or something, you know, that can make a big difference. So, yeah.
Mindfully nourishing your body.
Yeah.
That's an excellent skill.
Yeah, I think so too.
I love that. Absolutely. If your message resonates with somebody, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so email's great. I'm at sarah@sarahhenrycoaching.com. Sarah with an H. You know, I know it's the back-to-back H's. I'm like, maybe I should consider changing that.
Nope.
Also, that's my name. Don't wear it out. I'm also at sarahhenrycoaching.com, and all of my information's there, including my number. And just I work with people on Skype and Zoom too. You know, over the phone, so not just in the Denver metro area.
Location is not an issue.
No, it's not.
Technology is great when it's used appropriately.
I think so too.
When it's mindlessly scrolling, not so much.
Exactly.
Yeah. If there's one key piece that you want to leave us with today, that maybe we touched on briefly and you want to expand on, or that we didn't even get to today?
Sure.
What would you like to send us off with?
You know, I just think being true to yourself is everything. And, you know, it was funny because this morning I'm walking the new puppy and I was thinking a little bit about what I wanted to talk about today. And it was so odd. I'm walking by this house and this guy's, you know, getting into his car and he slams the door and takes off, and then his wife kind of follows him out and throws a can at the Jeep, and she's yelling at him and screaming, and her kids are standing next to her crying. And she looks at me because, of course, my dog stops, and I'm like, keep going, let's just keep going, this is so awkward. But she looks at me and she's like, yeah, you just witnessed that, and like storms back in the house. And I was like, wow, you know, there's a part of me that, no, there's all of me. I just wanted to hug her because I think we've all struggled at some point in our lives over something where we just feel like somebody doesn't understand. And my heart just broke for her because she's got 2 toddlers, you know, she's probably got her hands full. I just want to say that there's people out there that understand your situation. Mm-hmm. You're never alone. It goes back to what you were saying. Call a friend, call a good coach, a therapist, you know, somebody, you know, just be true to yourself and take care of yourself, whatever that looks like. But if you don't know what that looks like and you don't know where to start, just seek help, call somebody. That really struck me this morning, and I was like, this is divine inspiration. Just, yeah. Yeah,
Wendy Moss said that be kind, for everybody is fighting a battle that we know nothing about.
I love that.
I do too. It's definitely something I repeat to myself often. Mm-hmm. Giving others grace for where they're coming from. That's why I love the Enneagram so much, is because it gives me other people's perspectives.
In spades.
And then also it gives me grace and compassion as well. Mm-hmm. To remind myself that I've fought a battle or two. I guarantee somebody else out there, that person in the grocery line, the cashier behind the grocery line, has also faced.
Yeah.
And if we just set down our phone, put it in our pocket, and look up and make eye contact and thank them for their day.
Yes.
That mindful moment of human interaction and connection can go so far for the two of you.
I love that. Yeah, just trying to meet somebody where they're at and understand that they have scars too, and life isn't easy for anybody. It's, you know, it's hard sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's really hard, and you know, knowing that, you know, you can just help somebody by, like you said, making eye contact, smiling, you know, saying thank you. Mm-hmm. The simple things. Mm-hmm. It can make a world of difference.
Absolutely. And visualizing that happening, me like actually witnessing something like that. Now that at that moment is not the right time to even approach somebody like that and say, I can help, what do you need? Because they're not in that space. Yeah. They're not mindful enough of that within that moment. They're thinking about just what just happened inside the house, and they're living in the past 5 minutes, and they're not present. Because of course she would have recognized that her kids were right there.
Right.
And she does need to prioritize herself. We've talked about that almost the entire podcast.
Yeah.
So what does she need first so that she can pour into those children, so that she can trust her intuition to figure out what's the next step?
What does she need first? She probably needs a little space. I would hope, because here's the nice part. I saw her husband turn around and he came back, and I was like, I hope that this didn't get uglier. What I really hope for this couple is that he came in and said, you know, let's work this out, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But I hope she maybe said, you know, I need to walk away for 5 minutes and just breathe, whatever it is. I think that's really hard to ask for. We're trying to always be everything to everyone, you know? And I think society demands that of us to a certain extent, and we try to follow suit, and it's impossible to be perfect. I would just hope that she asked for help and took the time that she probably needed to just walk away. It's stressful being a mom. It's stressful. Mm-hmm.
And a wife and a mother and a sister and a daughter, and it is okay for you to ask for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, half a day.
Yeah.
If that's what you need to decompress and kind of sift through your emotions, because you're allowed to feel anger and you're allowed to feel fear and you're allowed to feel upset. tune into those emotions at that moment and ask for as much time as you need.
Yeah.
It could be a day, it could be a week, and then we come back and we regroup. But if it did escalate, just know that there is a safe place for you to go.
That too.
Yeah. And that if you don't reach out, if you haven't reached out before, please know that there's like a safe place for you to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that's the message I wanna send forth with you guys. Is like, if you need a place to go, there's always a solution.
There's always a solution. It may not be so easy to see, but knowing that it's okay to ask for help it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know your time is valuable, so I won't take up much more of it.
This has
Thank
been
you
fun.
so very much.
Yeah.
What do you
that's
say
great.
in the next 6 to 12 months we do it again, or
I would love that.
Facebook, Instagram Live, kind of a
We could
conversation?
do that too. Yeah.
Yeah, we appropriately use social media.
For the greater good. I like that.
Greater
We
good.
could maybe even talk about the Enneagram. I'm open to anything.
I love that.
Yeah.
And remind me, you're a type 4, the individualist.
I am. Sort of like that dark, tragic soul. Like Kurt Cobain was a type 4, and Joni Mitchell, all of these artists that just have like all of this pain and sorrow. And when I first figured out I was a 4, I was like, really? Because, I like to think of myself as a positive, happy person, but there's darkness there that I've definitely had to fight through, and I own it now. I'm like, yep, that's me. So I'd love to talk about that sometime.
Absolutely. There's darkness with every single Enneagram type number. And in order to see the beauty in ourselves, we need to step into that darkness or the shadow so that we can come out the other side with grace and compassion for ourselves and others.
Yeah. Yeah.
So since we've introduced you to the Enneagram, maybe it wasn't us that introduced you to it, but we've been having that conversation for a while. What's your biggest takeaway so far? Beyond that, you have amazing things to offer the world
Well, thank you.
as yourself. What's beyond that you found?
That, understanding your type, it's more than a number, right? It's like, it helps you to really understand that your personality is so multifaceted, and it helps you to really see what makes you tick. And I find it to be so fascinating. I was talking with somebody who is an Enneagram expert, and she was like, I've been practicing this and studying it for 25 years, and there's so much more to learn. And I was like, wow, that's incredible. But there's so much to learn about the human experience, the human condition, who we are. We're dynamic, multifaceted, complicated, interesting people. We all are. So we all have a story to tell. So
That's right.
Yeah.
And the path is all situational, and it's all within the seasons of life that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that knowing your type is very fluid as well.
Yes, that too.
I've gotten away from calling it type 8 or type 9 and actually using the descriptive word
Oh, okay.
of the challenger, because for somebody new to the Enneagram, they're like, well, I don't want to be put in a box as a type 4.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? Well, if I simply just introduce you to the individualist that you are,
Yeah.
then we can actually kind of absorb it and keep that grace component, the compassion component, along with this personal growth journey, that once we're awakened to it, once we're woke,
Stay woke.
that once we get to that point of like transition or transformation, there's so much beauty in it.
Yes. Yeah, and it goes back to what you said probably 20 minutes ago, those dark places, those really heavy experiences, you wouldn't change them for the world once you realize that the light feels so much lighter. And when you've experienced those dark moments, when you have something happen that feels joyful, it's that much more sweeter. So that much sweeter.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
That without the hardship, we can't actually enjoy the abundance that life can actually offer us.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
If Sarah's message resonates with you guys, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll put her information in the show notes below and in the blog. And thank you very much.
Thank you. This has been fun.
We'll connect again. Awesome. How do you feel?
I I feel like that went really well. How do
Good.
you?
Oh yeah, it was awesome.
Good. I felt really nervous at first. Like I didn't feel nervous coming over here. I've been
Right.
nervous all day, but when you hit play, I was like, oh